Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. Thank you very much, Roxy. I have to thank the organizers, the people of the LA Center for having me here. I was here 4 years ago in 2018 and prior to that in 2014. So somehow every 4 years I'm brought here by Baba. And so what I'm trying to do out here is just my own personal experience of understanding Baba and trying to live his messages. And as we all know, we have a unique DNA and fingerprint. So the journey with Baba is going to be unique to each one of us. So the analogy out here I use is like the ball game. If you're into the physical ball game like basketball, baseball, football, you have to know the rules of the game. That is only 1% inspiration, 99% is perspiration, as Thomas Edison said. So you have to practice, practice, practice. So each player will have to develop their own style of playing. And similarly, if you look at it from the mental game, like chess, bridge, poker, or a forex trader or a hedge fund manager, you have to know the rules of the game. So again, you have to practice, practice, practice. Now, who becomes a grandmaster or a champion in whatever they do? Not only the person who practices a lot, but also has passion and love. And that is what Baba is all about, that love is the only real thing in the world. And the whole creation came out of love, as we know from all the literature of Baba. So in that respect, this particular presentation, everything is perfect. But, since the Big Bang, we know from physics, 13.8 billion years ago, when the whole universe came out of this Om point, as per God speaks, and according to the quantum physics, from nothing, and they are still trying to figure that out, because they are still focused on the gross world, the gross sphere of existence. And Baba has said that the subtle sphere, the gross sphere is just the tip of the iceberg of the subtle sphere. The subtle sphere is the tip of the iceberg of the mental sphere. And then these three spheres are part of the illusion. The real sphere is where we are all trying to, discover and find ourselves. So, the presentation is about, so I have a question here. If the universe is perfect, like right from the Big Bang, because we know the whole material world is run according to Newton's laws, classical mechanics, and the subatomic world, quantum physics. And right at this moment, everything is perfect. But there is one thing that is not perfect. What do you think? What is it that is not perfect?
Our perception. Our perception of reality.
To reality, okay. Anybody else?
I already know the answer, so I'm not going to say.
Everything's perfect.
It's not easy to really simplify, but MeherBaba's wish is that we don't harm or hurt anyone, and to be loving and kind, and I don't have the whole list. And so that is a spiritual practice that is part of everything that is perfect, that has to become part of it actively. So here we are, and so this is perfect, but everything is not perfect, or Baba would not have given us his wish or our disciplines, because he wants us all to grow spiritually with him or another name of God director, Muhammad. So it's perfect, but we're in illusion, and MeherBaba works in illusion. We have to work in illusion. Baba used illusion. So there you have it. It's complicated.
Right.
That's just one word though, right?
Right, so please.
Well, I don't have love. Love.
Everything is perfect except man because of his mind, which is bunch of desires.
Mind.
So right, your interpretation was also correct, and the doctor said it's the mind. Yes, so I was going to say that everything is perfect in the universe except the human mind, the thinking mind ego, and only during the waking state of consciousness. Not the 24 hours, because 8 hours we go to sleep. So if we are in sound sleep state, the mind is not working there. So it's only when we are in the waking state of consciousness, in those 16 hours, that the human mind, the thinking mind ego is the culprit, where it's not perfect. It's a chantric mind. So with that, basically what I'm going to do out here is to talk about my interpretation of God Speaks and Discourses and how it has helped me in my journey. And then during the Q&A, we can have some discussion, So, anytime we do a project in life, whether in your material life or spiritual life, at any of the 7 stages, as Shakespeare said, life is a stage, and he has given that sonnet, if you read, it's very interesting, that let's take the number 84, because it's a nice number, 84 lakh human lives, as Baba said, before any soul gets liberated. If you're not under the guidance of a perfect master and you're on your own, every soul will get emancipated or get liberated by 84 lakh or 8.4 million human lives. So if you take the number 84, today, because of medical technology, let's say a human being lives for 84 years, you divide it by the number 7. 7 is a divine number, it gives you number 12. So every 12 years, multiples of 12, 12, 24, 36, 48 and so on, the human being physiologically, psychologically and psychosomatically goes through changes. Our duties and responsibilities change. So 12 years you are playing, then 12 to 24 you are figuring out your professional career, then 24 to 36 you are figuring out both personal and professional life and so on and so forth. So the interesting thing is that 84 years is approximately equal to 30,000 days. And in a day you have 24 hours. In that, if you sleep for 8 hours, that's about 10,000 days. 1/3 of the day we are asleep. That's equivalent to 28 years. So in terms of numbers, if you live till 84 and you sleep for 8 hours a day on average, 28 years you are asleep, you got only like 56 years to figure things out. Okay? Something to think about, okay? Now, this is something we ask. Now, I again used the 7 variables because it's very interesting, as we know, when sunlight goes through a prism, the 7 colors, the rainbow colors, the 7 days a week, the 7 wonders, the 7 chakras, the 7 planes of involution and so on and so forth. So I said, what do you do when you do a project in your personal life or professional life? You first consciously or subconsciously ask this question: who is the subject? Now, for this context of this presentation, it's about human beings, all of us. What is the objective? Why are we, what are we doing out here on planet Earth? So self-actualization, Maslow. So instead of using the word self-realization, God-realization, I thought let me use a politically correct word like self-actualization, to be non-denominational. So self-actualization by balancing mind and heart to answer the fundamental question, who am I? And I think this is not just Baba's God Speaks, it is also by Ramana Maharishi, who only asks one question and he say, go figure it out. Nanyar in Tamil, and Hindi we call it Maikon, who am I? So I think it's very clear from Baba's literature, because this is a Baba group, so who am I is what he, is the fundamental real question. And why is it important? Because we know we live a life of 84 years, we go through 7 stages, but we are all looking for happiness. And how does happiness reflect? So the 2 things, one is the material freedom and one is about spiritual freedom. Because as per the, in the next slide in Maslow, as we know, we need the basic, we have to take care of this body. There's a reason that the divine theme is such that we have a physical body, because the body is the medium for consciousness to emancipate and to realize its potential as superconsciousness, right? The Maha Chaitanya, superconsciousness. So, like when I was in college, I thought, let me become a monk, because if self-realization is the only goal, why go through the 4 stages of the Indian brahmachari, grahasti, vanaprastha, sannyas? We call it, when you're young, you're the single person, you go to school, you go to the Gurukul, and then you become a householder, you do your duties, and then the 3rd stage and the 4th stage is sannyas, which is renunciation. So I thought, let me go through the fast track. But I was not practical. I was putting the cart before the horse. So better to be practical first in life and then be idealistic. Don't be idealistic and try to be practical. So it has to go hand in hand. Let's be practical in life. So how does one fulfill this objective? Now we all know that from Darwin's theory of evolution, it's not evolution of forms, it's evolution of consciousness, which adopts different forms, that we are all part of nature, right from the God particle to the mineral kingdom, plant kingdom, animal kingdom, and the human kingdom. So we are not different from human nature within different kingdoms, and all the different kingdoms have to follow the laws of nature. Now the universal laws of nature can be very subjective, based on which school of thought you're looking at, the Western or the Eastern or a hybrid. So here I said, when you talk about the universal laws of nature, we are talking about a human being, and we know that one definition of a human being is we are all spiritual beings in a material body, right? Now, where does one start? Because all of us go through different experiences in life, and we don't ask this fundamental question, who am I, till we go through some, what Baba calls it, Shamshan Bhumi Vairagya, cremation ground dispassion or detachment. And the next one is Tivra Vairagya, which is intense dispassion when you lose a beloved or you lose a business. But that's still temporary, but only when you have Purna Vairagya, that is full dispassion, that is understanding of suffering, which is what Buddha talked about. So, you can start at any time. Depends on each person's sanskaras, as we know that. When does one begin the journey? Right now. Like Krishnamurthy would say, there is nothing like later. You have to do it right now. Because when you talk about time, we always talk about the present. So when you talk about the present, you have to talk about the past, you've got to talk about the future. So what is the past? Yesterday's present. And what is the future? Tomorrow's present. So these are all relative terms. Even in quantum physics, we know that space-time doesn't exist. It's just a way of trying to understand the universe symbolically. So the only thing that matters is the eternal now. Be here now. Which path should one choose? That is the most challenging part. Either you can do it on your own, like I was a spiritual shopper, I was reading everything under the sun. Everything was good, but there was no heart connection from 100%, heart-to-heart connection. So I think, the Meher school of yoga, when they talk about Hatha yoga, they talk about the head, heart and hands. Head, we talk about Jnana yoga, knowledge. Heart, Bhakti yoga, devotion. And hands, selfless service. So all of us are basically doing a permutation combination of all these three, head, heart, hands. There are exceptions like Ramakrishna Paramahamsa was a pure Bhakti yoga, or Sant Tukaram. And if you take Ramana Maharshi, he was more of a Jnana yogi, somebody who, tried to understand the concept of who am I. And Baba is very interesting. I call it the 80-20 rule. I think 80% of the people don't want to understand scientific aspects. They prefer the herd mentality, the 80-20 rule of life. 80% are the herd mentality, 20% try to do something. So Baba has given the easiest path, the path of love, where, knowledge, and when you talk about knowledge, the opposite of knowledge is ignorance. Because when you go to sleep, there's no knowledge and ignorance. It's only in the waking state. So in that sense, Baba has given us, for people who are not interested in the knowledge part, to just focus on love, just surrender. I call it LOSS. First is love, then is obedience. More than obedience is surrender, more than surrender is sacrifice. So these are the 7 variables we use any time for whether it's a material life or spiritual life. We ask these questions. Now, this is interesting, we know about the new humanity. I think we are all part of the new humanity now, especially with COVID and, the 21st century, especially after World Trade Center, we realized we are, to me, the World Trade Center was the beginning of World War III in a very distributed sense. And we are seeing this all the time now. Now, the new humanity is, we have to understand where we are, because each era we call in India the Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga. According to the Holy Science by Sri Yukteswar from Kriya Yoga, if everybody is familiar with Yogananda's book, Autobiography of a Yogi, Yogananda's guru was Sri Yukteswar, and Sri Yukteswar was instructed by his teacher, Avatar Babaji, to write a book to show the correlationship between the Bible and the Upanishads and the ancient Indian literature. It's a very interesting book, it's available on the PDF, it's called the Holy Science. So when he talks about these eras, the Satya Yuga is 4800 years, Treta Yuga is 3600, Dwapara Yuga is 2400, and Kali Yuga, the Dark Age, is 1200. We are much away from the center of the galaxy or something like that. So the whole divine theme is just this repetition of the same pattern. If you read God Speaks, you'll understand Baba talks about there have been many avatars. There are many universes. In physics, we talk multiverse. So this is just one universe we are talking about. So this thing is cyclical, whatever is happening. Now, the 7 realities, we all know that, and the first 2 reality Baba talks about is existence and love. And what does the 7 realities mean? In terms of how do you define God, I think it's there in the first 2 realities. First is existence. Second is self. Third, he talks about love. Then he talks about infinity. And then he talks about, what is the fifth one? One second. Infinity, right? The self, truth. So there were 5 variables: existence, self, love, infinity, truth. I have added one more thing to make it 7. One is being, not becoming, and Satchitananda, you can call it, the infinite knowledge, power and bliss. So in a way, when we try to define God, in the first 2 realities, Baba has talked about, how God can be defined as this infinite existence, the eternal infinite reality. Now, what is in it for us? This is all great to understand the literature, but ultimately, how do we put it into practice? So the real challenge is how to balance the mind and heart. And it's only during the waking state. The beauty about sleep is, for myself, I have shifted my frame of reference from the waking state to the sleep state. Why? Because when you go to sleep, you have 2 substates. One is the dream state and one is the sound sleep state. And when you are dreaming in your sleep, the dream is as real as the waking state till the time we wake up from the dream. So the interesting thing is, as long as you're dreaming in your sleep, it is as real as this. And when you wake up from the dream, you realize that it's So my point here is that in God Speaks, if you look at it, Baba has talked about the significance of the sound sleep state, which is called the divine absolute vacuum state, which is equivalent to unconscious nirvana, the first stage of fana, real fana. So in a way, all of us as human beings unconsciously are self-realized but not awakened because we are asleep during sound sleep state. That is why you feel bliss. And that is why nirvana is only bliss, first stage of real fana. The second stage of real fana is nirvikalpa samadhi. Satchitananda, infinite power, infinite knowledge, infinite bliss. So we have to understand that every soul will get liberated, and Baba has talked about mukti, the liberation. There is ordinary mukti, which is like after death, there are certain souls which will get liberated from the cycle of birth and death. But before death, you have nirvana, which means sanskaras have to become zero and people will drop their body. Then a few people who have attained nirvana can go to the second stage of fana, real fana, which is fana phila, nirvikalpa samadhi, which is actually God realization or self-realization. And after that, they also drop their bodies, and a few belong to the 56 God-realized souls. And these are all preordained, right from the Big Bang. Who will get liberation, ordinary mukti, who will become a majzub, who will become a paramahamsa, who will become a jivan mukta, or a majzub salik, salik majzub, a real salik, and a kutub, or a sadguru.
Can you explain that more as far as predestined? I mean, from the very beginning, you're saying everyone's life karmically is predestined?
As per the God Speaks literature, Baba says that because this whole divine theme is an imagination, so imagination has to start from somewhere, it has a beginning and an ending. So, from my understanding, he has clearly said that who becomes what is already designed. Which soul, drop soul, Atma, which one goes through nirvana, which one will transcend nirvana and go into nirvikalpa samadhi, and the third stage would be becoming part of that 56 God realized souls who have duties, functions. So that is something that is part of the divine theme. You can't ask why or what. It's just like the 20 physical constants in the material world and all the other constants like the 56 God realized souls, 5 Sadgurus, 7,000 in the spiritual hierarchy, and so on and so forth. So there are certain constants which are like fixed. That's the way it is. You have to accept it. I hope I answered your question.
Well, I always thought everyone can become God realized, but you're saying that as far as stations in the 7 layers, that not everyone is going to experience that. But everyone can eventually go through the 7 stages of consciousness, right?
Yes. That is the 7 planes of involution. One can go veiled or unveiled. Baba has said that better to go veiled because you don't have to waste your time getting distracted by the experiences, the illusionary experiences that you get in each of these different planes of involution. So initially even I thought that self-realization is the goal. But if we focus on that, at least you will get nirvana, annihilation of the mind. Because that is why Buddha, Baba has said that Gautam Buddha stopped at nirvana. He didn't talk about nirvikalpa samadhi. Because nirvana is before death, which means sanskaras have to become zero. And there is something called ordinary mukti or moksha in Sanskrit, which is after death, a few God-fearing souls who are probably following the 10 commandments and they will get liberated. So I call it like reverse musical chairs. Who gets out first? So I think we are all very familiar with this, so I won't get deep into this.
Can you repeat the 7 realities? Because last time you couldn't exactly get it. Existence, just read it.
Okay, so now Baba has given these 7 realities. Now, existence, love, sacrifice, some people think that they are in ascending order and descending order. I don't think so. These are just like the 10 commandments, you can look at it. But I like the way the first 2 are defined here, because here Baba doesn't talk about God. He says the only real existence is that of the one and only God, because actually he is defining God here, who is the self in every finite self, which is the realized self. Like in the East, when we do namaste or namaskaram or we bow, what do we mean? We are actually saying that myself is bowing to yourself, which is the same in all of us. But when I shake hands, it's my ego, I am. Like for example, when I was working in New York, in India we are supposed to be humble, right? We are not supposed to show off. So, you shake hands. And once when I was shaking hands with a colleague, and he said like, Kama, the handshake is very limp, why don't you give a hard shake, I said like, for what? He said, that's for self-confidence. You're like a dude. I said, I don't need it. I understand myself. I don't need to give this hard shake, And I used to always see that, as you would have observed, when you meet Westerners, when they give you a shake, it's pretty hard. So that is the meaning of the East and West, when we are talking about what is the self. So are you talking about your finite self, which is the ego self, or the realized self? The only real love is the love for this infinity. We have heard the word infinite, infinity. That is also defined as God, which arouses an intense longing to see, know, and become one with its truth. So interestingly, Baba's messages are very subliminal. At least for me, it's very interesting, it's not literal. You have to experience it, and it changes all the time. Every time I read Meher Baba's any message, it's very refreshing because we are also changing constantly, as we, by the time I finish a sentence, they say 50 million reactions are going in your body. So we are changing all the time, right? Because the universal law of nature is impermanence. Change is always happening. So the beauty about Baba's messages is it's always very fresh. It enlightens you, it gives you new insights. So I'm just sharing my insights, right? And of course, these things we know that real sacrifice, you have to sacrifice your material wants, which I call SOWN, state of wanting nothing. So I'm going to use a lot of acronyms, SOWN or ROD, renunciation of desires. Okay.
No! We need a cheat sheet. You put all the acronyms and what it is. That's it.
Yes, absolutely.
Remember.
Yes.
Remember Rod Stewart.
Oh, no!
So, of course, we know about renunciation, knowledge, of course, inner dweller, and, in good people and bad people. The real control is the discipline of the senses to abstain from indulgence in low desires, which alone ensures. I like to use the word awareness instead of control, because English is a very ambiguous language. So, control means for me Newton's third law of motion, action begets reaction. Like when you do Vipassana practice, the 10-day silent meditation, what do they tell you to do? You actually close your eyes and you observe your breath, and you are observing your mind, your thoughts basically. So when you're sitting and observing your breath and your thoughts, you are told to just allow the thoughts, good or bad, to come in and go. Don't try to control. If you control, you're going to have Newton's third law, which means creating new sanskaras. We know that thoughts, words and deeds create weak impressions, strong impressions and powerful impressions. Because the meaning of sanskaras definition is the imprints or impressions created by the action of thoughts, action of words, action of deeds. The prayer of repentance. It's only about thoughts, words and deeds. And I think in one part, the only thing you have to know in spirituality is good thoughts, good words, good deeds. Because that is what we are doing when we wake up in the morning, is thinking, speaking and doing. The 80-20 rule. 20% of thoughts converted to words, 20% of words converted to deeds. And we are just a bundle of sanskaras, reacting or responding. Reacting unintelligently or responding intelligently by unwinding sanskaras. So, this is what he says, like ultimate surrender, right? Love, obedience, surrender, sacrifice. This poise is undisturbed by any circumstance. It's actually a play. I mean, to me, I feel like I'm an actor, player actor. Like I'm here, giving this, rap, right? It's like a one-act show, interpreting a beautiful, spiritual literature for the 21st century, which is very practical. And we are all in this like reality show. With no script, you just come in. Today you decided to come in here. And this is like living in the eternal moment. That is the beauty. So what is a new humanity? One is, the last 5,000, 10,000 years, the East has looked at the inner spirit through all the Upanishads, Vedanta and all that. In the last 500 years, from Galileo, Newton, we have the Industrial Revolution. The interesting thing is, if you think of the Industrial Revolution, if it started in 1800, just for hypothetical purposes, 1800 to 1950, we saw this whole in the machine age. 1950, Turing machine, mainframe computers. 1995, we had the laptop, information revolution, 45 years. 1995, I remember Netscape went public, Mosaic was the software, the browser, and the internet took off. So 1995 to 2005, we used to have digital cameras, digital audio stuff, everything was separate phones. 2015, we are having smartphone which does everything, convergence. So in a very practical sense, from 150 years to 45 years to 20 years to 7 years, disruptive technology, things are changing fast. So this is definitely for me, example of the avatar coming into place and the shift of human consciousness. You know, as Baba said, there's a phrase about spring, right? I forget the exact phrase, but it's a clear example that all these years, for the last 5,000, 10,000 years, we were an agrarian, community, and then suddenly we are here and we take it for granted. Nobody thinks like, hey, what's going on? Like the Marvin Gaye album, right? What's going on? So, what are we trying to do out here? We are talking about human consciousness, we are talking about the material body, and the material body, as we know, is the gross body, subtle body, mental body. So you have gross, subtle, and mental consciousness, and the whole idea is to, to awaken that super consciousness, because the super consciousness is covered by the residue of impressions or sanskaras through evolution. Where does lust, greed, anger come? The 7 deadly sins: infatuation, lust, greed, anger, jealousy, fear, worry, from the animal kingdom. So there are no sinners. We are here to play. How to play this game of life. The only thing is we are so half-baked with the laws of matter, we have forgotten the laws of the spirit. And in those days, people who lived in villages, their material life was very simple. They could focus on a very complicated spiritual life and go deeper. Now it's the opposite. We are trying to juggle. And that is why I think Baba said, forget about all the rituals. Just know thyself, love thyself. To love yourself, you have to know yourself. And that's where Baba's literature comes in. And to know yourself, you have to love yourself. That's it. And then you love everybody. So, this we know. Today, the East and West, multinational corporations. This is a beautiful thing that Baba talked about. There's nothing, we always talking about inferiority, superiority, complexes. Baba has this saying, the human beings are born in the East and in the West in different cycles of time as a male or female, having either a superiority complex or an inferiority complex, or there's only unity. We understand that from quantum physics also, non-duality. So, main thing is adjustment. It's not that you eliminate material life. All the ancient masters, saints have said that being a householder is good. Be part of life. You don't have to renounce. And that is the real challenge. Because there's nothing new you're doing. You're just shedding off the ignorance. Learning is only in the technical field. What we are trying to do is unlearning the ignorance. There's only unlearning happening in the spiritual realm. There's nothing new to learn. So the whole idea is, why are we trying to understand, Discourse of God Speaks is, what are the true and lasting values? Truth, love, friendship, so on and so forth. Right attitude toward worldly duties. That's what it's all about. Why are we human beings? And ceremonies, rituals were relevant in those times. This is my interpretation. In the olden times, when you lived in a village, in a community, no newspapers, no telephone, nothing. And we know the expression, an idle mind is a devil's workshop. You're not going to the field all the time. So they devised all these festivals, Krishna Jayanti, Christmas and Jewish this, that, we have got crores, millions of gods in India. For those 365 days, we can invent 3 different rituals, morning, afternoon, evening. But there's a reason behind that. Because they wanted the mind to be focused on the inner spirit. But today it's no more relevant. Because we have this very complicated material life. So that is why I think Baba has come and said like, hey, just be good to others. Because the whole aspect of living is about relationships. Right? Human relationships. One is with yourself and how you relate to animate and inanimate matter. That's it. And relationships can only happen if it's about love, right? You have to be a lovely person to have good relationships. So that is what I think Baba's main theme when he talks about love. Initially I used to think, who is this guy telling me, love me, love me? He's a human being and he's saying, love me, who is he like? But I can understand because Baba is a personification of our realized self. That's it. We need a form to identify and then you go from the form to the formless. Saguna Sakar to Nirguna Nirakar. From attribute forms to attributeless formless, because that's what the nothingness is all about. So, we talked about this, and we know that the only real goal is self-realization, right? And how do we balance the heart and mind? So this we all know, it's all about love. This is the balancing act. Baba has said it clearly in one of the Discourses chapters. Spiritual journey is not for the faint-hearted. It is not like sitting on a saddled horse, but it's like walking on the edge of a sharp sword every waking moment. And it's all about self-awareness. And the Vipassana meditation helped me to understand sanskaras in a very experiential way, and also to be able to becoming much more aware of myself. Just use the mind for practical reasons. The rest of the time you focus on yourself. How do you do that? You don't know what the self is. The best thing is, the nearest thing is your breath. And in the breath, Baba said, inhale ba and exhale ba. Keep saying ba, ba, ba. But be sincere and honest, right? Be aware, like, don't do like this chanting, you can see the Hare Krishna guys going and, so you can't do that. Right? So I've defined, we talked about, so basically what we are talking about is being and becoming, right? So I don't say hello to my friends. I say, what's up, Bob? Being or becoming? How are you doing? I say, what's up, Bob? Being or becoming? That's what we are doing. So, when you look at the word human being, we are already defined as a being, which means you are supposed to be self-realized. And that's what Baba said, because evolution process, when you become a human being, you have full and complete consciousness, but you're not awakened to that consciousness because it's covered with sanskaric impressions. And that's why we are here to play. I say play, not pray or P-R-E-Y, right? Who are you praying to? Yourself? What for? So the challenge is, between maintaining this personal life, professional life, because it's very practical. I think Baba was very practical. I think that is one of the most important messages. Now, this I've just defined about the heart and mind, so it's very self-explanatory. Heart is about being, mind is about becoming. And I don't know why the Maslow's thing is not here, but Maslow is a beautiful framework that every parent, every student, every teacher, every child should be aware of. Because the basic needs of a human being is food, shelter, clothing. Roti, kapda, makan, in Hindi we call it. Then you want to have a nice personal family life, a nice professional work life. You reach the peak of your profession, like Rajat Gupta, Rajaratnam, and all those guys I knew. One guy went for 2 years to jail, and the other guy went for full. They had everything. One guy had $1.3 billion, the other had $130 million. He was in the board of Goldman Sachs and Procter Gamble. He was the head of McKinsey and all that. Now, why does an individual like that, with everything that he has achieved in the material life, had to do something at that point? So Maslow's hierarchy explains that. Before self-actualization is a stage called self-esteem. So people who have low self-esteem, irrespective of how much they have achieved in their material life, have this problem. Because there is an imbalance between their inner and outer life. The outer material life and their inner spiritual life. And this was my insight when I tried to understand, why do these people indulge in these things? Because there is an imbalance. So it's very important to know both the laws of matter and laws of spirit, to have this balancing act. So, real I, false I, heart is about intuition. Baba said a beautiful thing in Significance of Male and Female Incarnations, that men excel in the qualities of mind and will, women excel in the qualities of the heart, but mind and heart have to balance each other. But heart always has precedence over the mind. So women are much more, I believe, would I use the word superior than men, because you have that direct connection to your heart intuition. And then Baba also said, We have gone from the age of animal instinct to the age of analytical reasoning mind. Now it is the age of intuition. Very simple, because when we evolved from the apes to the hunter-gatherers or cave dwellers, we were basically animal instinct. Then we started having fire and agriculture and became pharaohs and kings. We started using analytical reasoning mind, which is what the 10,000 years of all the spiritual literature in the last 500 years in quantum physics and everything else that we have today, everything was on the fingertip. So I think knowledge is available to everybody now. The only thing is practice. What process will I use? And that is where I think the guidance of a teacher or a perfect master helps. That's where your spiritual shopping goes on. Who do I connect with? So I think these are just, I don't have to describe all this, you have read through it. This is a beautiful thing. What is, people ask me, I think Roxy's dad yesterday asked me, what do I think about meditation? We have been taught you go sit down and you close your eyes and you chant something or you meditate. To me, meditation is, this is meditation. Because I am giving 100% of my being to this presentation, and hopefully you guys are giving 100% attention. That is a form of meditation, right? Krishnamurthy had a saying, the only thing in life you can do is brush your teeth better than the last time you did. Do we brush our teeth with self-awareness? Do we do a better job than we did yesterday? We just do it. So I think meditation is a stage. The moment you wake up, you are completely focused and concentrated on everything you do with your being. There's nothing, no duality. This is minor, that is major. Everything you do. And there you transcend duality. Because you give importance to everything. Nothing is minor or major. So how does reading help? This we all know. You have to read it. I went through 97 when Baba discovered me and I read Discourses, God Speaks, I got the gist. As Baba said, man suffers from lust, greed and anger, convert lust into love, greed into generosity, anger into compassion and tolerance, which is to do with the gross, subtle and mental body. I said, yeah, I've read this in the 10 Commandments. I've read it in the Patanjali Sutras. So what's a big deal? Nothing is, I'm still having lust, greed and anger. I'm reading all this beautiful literature, I connect with him, but there's no change in me. So that was a big struggle, till 2009. And I think all of us have gone through that experience. So I found that, I'm a person who's very persistent. I don't give up, okay? Because there's nothing left to lose anyway, right? You're going to be dead. So I said, be an incorrigible optimist than a pessimist. So I kept reading, and I think when I said in 2009, I had the awakening. When I went to Amarthiti, I had a flashback of an incident from high school where I had seen Baba's picture. And they are from the same community as this family is from, Andhra Pradesh. I would say 50 to 60% of Baba lovers are from this state. Maybe 20 to 30% from Maharashtra, which is where the Samadhi is, Ahmednagar. And the rest from all over the world. It's fascinating, that one particular state and two states dominate almost 70 to 80% of the devotees of Meher Baba. For whatever it is, And this is very clear that once you get it, you have to keep, if, I don't know how many of you have read Nisargadatta Maharaj's I Am That. It's a beautiful, for me, it's an extension of Baba's, messages. This is all about the self. You're always thinking about the self. And it's all about self-awareness. To me, Baba is all about self-awareness because he's yourself, So, I think, of course, not everybody is interested in reading and understanding the literature. So, Baba has given the easy way out. All the, what I call, what we talk about relationships. And the 7, for me, the 8 ways of remembering God. How to love God, how to love Baba. One of the 3 prayers, the Parvardigar prayer, the prayer of repentance and the beloved. And it's actually equivalent to the Parvardigar prayer is a Jnana Yoga prayer. It's about, the formless aspect of God. Prayer of repentance is the karma yoga prayer, how you do action in real life. And the third, the beloved God prayer is the bhakti yoga, the devotion, the heart part. So head is Parvartika prayer, heart is the beloved God, hands is the prayer of repentance. Now, apart from that, the 7 realities also gives you a kind of roadmap. What are we supposed to do in our waking state? You know? Another one is those 8 postulates on how to love God, right? And I think the how to love God, Baba has clearly said, the last one, to love God as He ought to be loved, we must live for God and die for God, knowing that the goal of all life is to love God and find Him as our own self. It all comes down to yourself. He's right here. For me, when Baba says, I'm going to manifest, I'm going to speak the only word, I think all of us know the word. He's inside us. That's it. Others are waiting. I mean, he's talking about the general public. When he will awaken himself in their hearts. The 3 couplets of Hafiz, I think Baba made it was very particular about, when before he dropped his body, he made sure the Mandali got him the 3 couplets and he said, and I have memorized that, befitting a fortunate slave, carry out every command of the master without asking any question of why and what. About what you hear from the master, never say it is wrong because, my dear, it's your own incapacity to understand him. I am the slave of the master who has released me from ignorance. Whatever my master does is of the highest benefit to all concerned. It's all about devotion, total, love, obedience, surrender to the perfect master. Then the 12 ways of realizing God, Baba has given, because we are all different, so you can choose any one of those. The 7 Sahabah sayings. I love it. And the one thing in the Sahabah sayings, there are 7 of them, and each one has about 2 or 3 postulates. The one I'm going to just share with you is real happiness lies in making others happy. Let me have a drink first. Here he says, the real desire, because we are all talking about desires, right? The real desire is that which leads you to become perfect in order to make others perfect. I used to ask this question, Mama, I got the literature right. Why do I need to be perfect? I'm already fine. I'm doing fine, I got the message. Be loving to others, mind your own business of sanskaras, right? Mind your own business, they say. I say, mind your own business of sanskaras. To each his own, they say. I say, to each his own sanskaras. Like the Clint Eastwood movie, The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, right? In our daily encounters, you're going to meet people of different kinds. Now the question was, what do I do with them? So I said, they're all playing their roles based on their sanskaras. So just accept and go on, move on. So the real desire is that which leads you to become perfect. Yes, he wants you to have this desire to become perfect in order to make others perfect, right? And then the second one, he says, the real aim is that which aims to make others become God by first attaining Godhood yourself. Look at the active and passive voice in each of the sentences. The real aim is that which aims to make others become God. Oh, we got to have this aim, like to make others become God by first attaining Godhood yourself. Same message. So then I realized, my God, I'm trapped. I have to become perfect because I have to make others become perfect because they are your same self. So it's a very interesting mind game, you call it the Einstein thought experiment. Einstein didn't have super colliders to find out about God particles and all that relativity theory. So I think in a way, Baba has given us this beautiful way, like being an Einstein, a thought experiment to self-realization. When I was working on Wall Street, I was doing a lot of venture capital, investment banking, because, you do with technology companies. Now we hear the word serial entrepreneur, you invest in different companies and some make real great money and then you go on. And somewhere I read like the best way of being a serial entrepreneur is focusing on yourself. You don't need to, bother about anybody. You're on your own. You don't have to deal with management, with people, house by invest. You have to invest in yourself. And it's the best thing, and you don't need anything except the guidance of Baba. It's the best form of serial entrepreneurship. All right. So I think, we started at 11:40. I was given 1 hour. So if you're getting bored, we can stop here. And I'll give another 5 minutes and then we can leave for Q&A. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
I think we are already there. This is what I did. See, Discourses has 70 chapters. When I was reading Discourses, each chapter is definitely, it's Baba. So everything is very insightful. But I was trying, I'm an engineer by training. I like to look at patterns, I like to connect things. And I found it very difficult to understand the framework. What the hell is going on, Yes, who am I is the question, but how do you navigate? Because life is like a jigsaw puzzle, a unique jigsaw puzzle for each one of us. First, you have to find the right jigsaw pieces, right knowledge, and then you have to put it together. And it's your own game, nobody's going to help you. Baba is like a PhD guide, like a Nobel Prize winner guide. He's been guiding you to do your thesis of self-actualization. So what I did was, of course, it's all Baba's work. So this is what I did. So, we always start with the macro and the micro, like quantum, Newton's laws is with the macro world, deals with certainties. Quantum physics deals with the subatomic world with probabilities. So let's start with God and Maya. We know what is God, the 7 realities, right? So I have taken the opposites or the dualistic aspect. So you have God and Maya. There are some beautiful chapters there. Then you try to understand who the hell is Avatar and Perfect Master. Now, according to me, Avatar is not God. Avatar is God in human form. Or I would say, first way to define Avatar is the first human drop soul to become God realized and given the designation of Chairman Emeritus Avatar. Nobody can become an avatar. It's taken. He was the first guy to win the spiritual lottery of self-realization and he became Chairman Emeritus Avatar. And he's the only one who comes every 700 to 1400 years. But we all have an opportunity to become Sadgurus or Paramahamsa. That also is probably preordained. So we have no, but we can try, if you're writing an entrance exam, you can come number 1, rank number 1 or rank number 100. It's okay. If you're studying for medical or engineering or anything, you can be top of the class, you can be at the bottom. Nobody asks you, they're only looking at your performance later, So avatars and perfect masters. Then I looked at spirit and matter, reincarnation and karma, very important to know. Consciousness and sanskaras. We know we have gone through, subatomic state to human consciousness and reaching super consciousness, Maha Chaitanya. And sanskaras is the most important thing that every human being has to know. Today many Sanskrit words have become part of the English language. Guru, avatar, karma, yoga. But the most important word, I think I can predict that sanskaras will become a buzzword. Because this is what every human being has to know. Because we are a byproduct of our sanskaric impressions. Period. In one line. Whole discourse is all about understanding sanskaras. God speaks is who is God, what is God, why God. How to attain God realization is discourses. It's a roadmap. And then love and ego, they are inversely proportional, right? Love is about the heart, ego, the real I and the false I. So the first 6 are knowledge part and yoga and meditation is the action part. So what I did was, this can be distributed. So I took the different chapters and put them in different, the chapters in those categories. And the blue one is from God Speaks. So anybody can fine tune it, that's up to you. So I don't have to go into the details of this. So this is what I've done. So we have done some classes and people liked it to read. Some people were very, Discourses was edited like this. I gotta go only by sequence, I can't do it this way. It's very flexible, man. Come on. You're not here to, So there used to be fights on that. I was trying to make it easy for people to understand discourses, but there was this, attitude, oh no, Baba said, this goes like this. So this is what I've done, using the supplement and everything, and to make it easy for all of us, love and ego, they are so beautiful, those whole chapters, and especially this I think is a psychologist's dream. I meet people who are reading psychology and about the subconscious and the conscious. I think if psychiatrists can understand this, they will resolve a lot of things with people who are, God and Maya, right? I think this is very intense. I mean, very challenging chapters in Discourses, the Maya part. So avatars and perfect masters, so I took all that you see from the page numbers, it's all like random, but this is how I looked at it.
Where have you been making these presentations? Here in the United States?
This is the first time I'm doing it in the US, but I had this thing on YouTube. I think the American Association, I think there's a YouTube presentation of this, which Roxy, So yoga and meditation, beautiful chapters. I think Baba has given us a whole complete manual how to live life. And for me personally, a lot of doubts that I had, I just used to throw it at the universe and Baba used to answer me. You just have to have, like Baba said, intense effort and infinite patience. Intense effort to become effortless, right? So I think it's beautiful what he has done, in terms of giving us a practical way of approaching life without the need of being guided by, the so-called Babas, whatever that is. And that's it.